I never imagined that one day my younger brother would message me out of the blue and tell me not to worry about his tuition, that he had already paid for it using money he earned from Roblox. Even now, replaying that moment in my head makes me smile with disbelief. It felt surreal, as if time had looped back to the days when he was just a little boy, hunched over an old, overheating laptop, desperately trying to squeeze joy out of a game that froze every few minutes. My brother has always been obsessed with Roblox. To most people, it was just another game kids played, a colorful, blocky world full of mini-games and endless imagination. But for him, it was something more. It was an escape, a passion, a world where he could create, trade, and live out adventures that our real lives could not afford. We didn't have much growing up. Our family got by, but luxuries were always out of reach. Our first computer wasn't even really ours. It was something my uncle had passed down, a machine that wheezed and groaned every time you asked it to open a program. The fan was so loud that you could hear it from another room, and the battery barely lasted 10 minutes if the power went out. Still, that clunky old laptop became his doorway to Roblox. I remember coming home late one night and finding him still awake, his face lit up by the pale glow of the screen. His headphones were broken on one side, so he had taped them together with electrical tape. His little hands moved furiously on the trackpad, no mouse, just the pad, trying to make his character jump over an obstacle. The lag was brutal. By the time the jump registered, the obstacle was already long gone, and his character would stumble and fall. "Why don't you take a break?" I asked him. "You're just torturing yourself." He looked up at me with this grin that only a child could have. "It's okay, Kuya. It's fun. I just need to be patient." That line stuck with me. I just need to be patient. It summed up so much of who he was even as a child. Determined, hopeful, unwilling to quit, no matter how frustrating the circumstances. Years later, when I finally started working, those memories haunted me. I thought about all the times I wished I had better tools, a faster computer, a smoother internet connection, the little things that could have made my own childhood dreams easier. And I decided that if I could give my brother those things, I would. So I did. The first time I brought home a brand new gaming laptop for him, his eyes went wide. He didn't say much at first. He just touched the box like it was something sacred. "For me?" he whispered. "Of course for you," I said. "You've been waiting long enough to play without lag." That night, I sat beside him as he booted it up for the first time. The fans purred softly. No wheezing, no choking noises, no long minutes of waiting. Roblox loaded instantly. His character jumped smoothly, ran without stuttering, and he looked at me with that same grin he had years ago, only this time there was no frustration behind it, just pure joy. From then on, I made it a point to spoil him whenever I could. I bought him an external monitor so his world could be bigger, brighter. I got him an iPhone so he wouldn't feel left out when his friends played together. It wasn't about showing off. It was about giving him the childhood I wished I had. And I told him something I meant with all my heart. Don't worry about getting a job. I know how hard it is to study while working. I went through it myself, and I don't want you to struggle like that. Let me handle your tuition, your allowance, everything. All I ask is that you take your studies seriously. If you want to play Roblox all night, go ahead, but don't let your grades drop." He nodded, and for years that was our unspoken agreement. He played sometimes until the early hours of the morning, but he kept his grades steady. And I kept my promise, paying for everything he needed. Then yesterday happened. He sent me a message. At first, I assumed it was another request for tuition. I had already gotten so used to it that I didn't even think twice. My hand went straight to my phone, opening my banking app, ready to transfer the money as I always did. But then he said, "Kuya, don't pay for my tuition this time." I froze, confused. "What do you mean? Who's going to pay for it?" There was a pause, and then his reply came. "Me. I already did. I earned enough from playing Roblox, specifically from this game called Grow a Garden. I made a lot of money, buying and selling pets. So yeah, tuition's covered." I can't even describe the feeling that hit me in that moment. Pride, disbelief, amazement. It all came crashing at once. This was the same boy who once struggled on a lagging laptop, who used to say, "I just need to be patient." And now here he was, not only earning money from the game he loved, but choosing to spend it on something so responsible, so meaningful. He didn't have to do that. He could have spent it on clothes, on gadgets, on nights out with friends. But the very first thing he thought of was his tuition. That decision told me everything I needed to know about the kind of man he was becoming. When he told me he had paid his own tuition, I felt this strange mix of emotions I can barely put into words. I was proud, of course. So proud I almost wanted to cry. But also stunned, confused, almost disoriented. For years, I had trained myself to expect that every big responsibility would fall on me. I had promised myself that no matter what, I would make sure he had nothing to worry about financially. And suddenly, here he was telling me he didn't need my help, not this time. I remember sitting there in silence, staring at my phone screen. My thumb was still hovering over the banking app as if refusing to believe the news. I asked him again just to be sure. "Are you serious? You really paid it?" And he replied with a laugh. "Yes, Kuya. Why would I joke about tuition? I told you I earned enough in Roblox. I've been trading pets and grow a garden. People pay real money for them, and I got lucky with a few rare ones. It's been building up for a while. I thought, instead of spending it on random stuff, I'd use it for something important. Important. That word echoed in my head. For him, tuition was important. For me, his decision was everything. I leaned back on my chair and closed my eyes. My mind drifted back to those years when we barely scraped by. There were days I skipped meals so he wouldn't have to. There were months when the bills piled up, and I thought I'd never escape that cycle. I carried all of it on my shoulders because I wanted him to walk lighter than I did. And now, hearing that he had taken a step on his own, it felt like my burden had suddenly transformed into something brighter, something worth carrying all those years. I couldn't help but reply. I'm proud of you, you know that? You didn't have to do that, I told you I'd cover everything. He just sent back a smiling emoji, typical of him. Never too dramatic, never too sentimental. But behind that simplicity I knew there was thought, maturity, and gratitude. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed thinking about the journey he had taken, and the journey we had taken together as siblings. I thought about how, when he was little, I often felt guilty. Guilty that I couldn't give him more. Guilty that I was too focused on surviving, to notice all the small things he wanted. Maybe that's why, when I started earning money, I gave so much to him. It wasn't just generosity, it was redemption. I wanted to rewrite the story of his youth. And yet, as I thought about it, I realized something. He hadn't just been passively receiving. All those nights spent on Roblox, all those hours I worried were wasted on gaming. They had shaped him. He had learned patience, strategy, community, even business. Trading pets might sound silly to outsiders, but to him, it was practice in economics, negotiation, supply and demand. He had turned play into profit. The next day, when we talked more, he explained how it worked. You know, Kuya, in Grow a Garden, you can hatch pets. Some are common, but some are super rare. People want those rare ones really badly. At first, I just collected them for fun, but then I realized I could sell them. I started with small trades, earning just a few pesos here and there. But then it grew. One day I traded a rare pet for way more than I expected, and I thought, if I keep it this, I can build something. I listened, fascinated. He was speaking like a small entrepreneur, like someone who had discovered the secret that passion plus persistence could equal opportunity. I asked him, and you never thought of spending it on yourself? On gadgets or games? He shrugged. I mean, I thought about it. But you've already given me so much. You gave me the laptop, the phone, everything I wanted. I didn't need more. I figured the least I could do was use this money for something that matters. You always said to never neglect my studies, right? So paying for my tuition, it just made sense. Hearing that hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just that. He had paid for his tuition. It was that he remembered my words, that he valued them enough to make them the guiding principle of his decision. For a long time, I had wondered if he truly understood the sacrifices I made. I never asked for thanks. But sometimes in the quiet of the night, I questioned whether he realized how much of my life I had rearranged for his sake. That moment gave me the answer. He knew. He had always known. As the days passed, I couldn't stop replaying our conversation in my mind. I thought about the boy he used to be, sitting in front of that old laggy laptop, whispering, I just need to be patient. That boy had grown into a young man who no longer needed my constant rescue. He had learned not just patience, but initiative. Responsibility and the value of hard work, even if his work looked like just playing a game to others. And maybe that was the lesson for me, too. That sometimes, the seeds we plant as siblings, as family, bloom in ways we never expect. I gave him tools, support, and freedom. He gave me back pride, gratitude, and proof that all those sacrifices were worth it. That's when I realized, this wasn't just his victory, it was ours. When I was lying awake that night after our conversation, more memories kept flooding in. Memories I hadn't thought about in years. I remembered the very first time my brother asked me about Robux. He must have been around 10 or 11, just a skinny kid with messy hair, sitting cross-legged on the floor with our old laptop perched dangerously on a rickety wooden chair. He called me into the room, his eyes sparkling. Kuya, he said, do you know what Robux is? I didn't, at the time. To me, it just sounded like another silly thing kids talked about. I asked him, what's that? Some kind of robot. Money? He laughed. It's the money inside Roblox. If you have it, you can buy cool stuff, skins, pets, things like that. He paused, hesitant. Can we buy some? I looked at him, and for a moment my heart sank, because I knew what he was really asking. Can we afford it? The truth was, back then, we couldn't. I was just starting out, barely earning enough to cover my own needs, and every extra peso had to go somewhere practical. I told him gently, not right now, maybe someday. He nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. He turned back to the screen and kept playing with what little he had, in-game. He never begged, never complained, never threw a tantrum, he just accepted it. That quiet acceptance cut deeper than any tears could have. That was the moment I promised myself. When I had enough, I would give him what he asked for, not because he needed it to survive, but because he deserved to enjoy being a kid without always worrying about what we could or couldn't afford. Years later, when I finally handed him his first gift card for Robux, the way his face lit up, I swear it was like giving a child the keys to a kingdom. He ran around the house, waving the card in the air like he had just won the lottery. That memory still makes me smile. But it wasn't just the Robux. Over time, it was everything else. The gaming laptop, the monitor, the phone, all those things were more than just material gifts. They were proof that we had climbed out of the pit we used to be in. They were proof that the patience he showed as a kid was finally being rewarded. Sometimes, though, I worried. I worried that maybe I was giving too much, that maybe I was making him dependent on me. There were nights when I stared at the ceiling asking myself, am I spoiling him? Am I raising him to think life will always hand him what he wants? But then, I would see him work. Not in the traditional sense. He didn't have a part-time job at a cafe or a store, but in the way he dedicated himself to the game. Hours and hours spent figuring out how the trading system worked, learning which pets were valuable, which ones weren't, practicing negotiation with strangers online. It was easy to dismiss it as just playing, but when I really looked at him, I saw someone learning economics, supply and demand, even customer psychology. One night I walked past his room and saw him scribbling notes on a pad of paper. He wasn't doing homework. He was writing down trade values, keeping track of which pets he had, which ones he wanted, and what deals he had made that day. He looked so focused, so intent. What are you doing? I asked. He looked up, embarrassed. Just keeping track. I don't want to forget which trades are good. I chuckled and shook my head, but deep down, I was impressed. At his age, I wouldn't have had the discipline to organize something like that. Still, I worried about his studies. That was the one condition I had always set. Never let the games get in the way of school. So every semester I checked in, I asked about his grades, about his classes, and every time he showed me that he was keeping up. Not perfect, not top of the class, but steady. Passing, balancing. That balance was what convinced me to keep supporting him, because I could see that he wasn't careless, he wasn't reckless. He was building something quietly, patiently, just as he always had. And then came the day I surprised him with the full setup, the gaming laptop, the external monitor, even a new desk to put it all on. I saved for months to afford it. I still remember carrying the boxes into the house, trying to act casual, while my heart raced with excitement. He came home from school, dropped his bag by the door, and froze when he saw the boxes. "What's that?" he asked, wide-eyed. "Open it," I said. He tore into the boxes like it was Christmas morning. When he pulled out the sleek, brand-new laptop, he looked at me like I had just handed him a piece of the future. "For me?" he whispered, as if he couldn't believe it. "Of course for you," I said. "You deserve it." That night, we set it up together. For the first time, Roblox loaded without a hitch. No lag, no stuttering. His character moved smoothly, jumped exactly when he pressed the key, and he laughed so loudly that I couldn't help but laugh with him. It was one of those moments that etched itself into my memory. A reminder of why I worked so hard, why I gave so much. Because seeing him happy like that, it was worth everything. And now, years later, hearing him say, "I paid my tuition with Roblox money," felt like the closing of a circle. From the boy who once couldn't even afford Robux, to the young man paying for his own education with earnings from the very same game. It was poetic, it was powerful, it was everything I had hoped for and more. After that conversation with my brother, I found myself watching him differently. Not just as the kid I had raised, spoiled, and protected, but as someone carving out his own path. It was strange, almost unsettling to realize that the boy who once relied on me for everything had quietly grown into a man capable of carrying responsibilities on his own. There's this moment that stands out in my memory. We were sitting at the dinner table a few nights later, and I casually brought up, the tuition again. "You really didn't need me this time, huh?" I said, half joking. He grinned, poking at his food. "Well, not for tuition. Maybe for snacks, though." We both laughed, but underneath the joke was a truth I couldn't ignore. He wasn't helpless anymore, and that realization stirred something deep inside me. For so long, my identity as an older brother had been wrapped around the idea of providing for him. I was the safety net, the shield, the one who made sure he never had to feel the struggles I endured. Letting go of that role, even just a little, was harder than I thought. But pride outweighed the fear. Because the truth is, every sacrifice I made, every long hour at work, every peso I spent on his needs, every night I stayed awake worrying, had led to this moment. This was the proof that it all mattered. He had taken what I gave him and built something of his own. It reminded me of planting a tree. For years you water it, protect it, shield it from storms, and then one day, without warning, you look up and realize it's strong enough to stand, on its own, its branches stretching toward the sky. That's what my brother had become. Sometimes I think back to those early mornings when I would leave for work, glancing into his room and seeing him asleep at his desk, headphones still on, Roblox still open. I used to worry then. Is he wasting his time? Am I letting him get lost in something unproductive? Now I see it differently. He wasn't wasting time, he was investing it. He was learning patience, strategy, community, and persistence. While other kids saw just a game, he saw opportunity. He practiced skills that one day would pay for his education. And more than the money, more than the tuition itself, it was the choice that struck me the most. The choice to put his earnings towards something meaningful. The choice to honor not just himself, but me too. It was his way of saying, "Thank you for believing in me. Let me take some of the weight now." That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone in the quiet of the living room. The house hummed with silence, the kind of silence that makes you reflect. I thought about the boy who once begged me for Robux and accepted it when I said no. I thought about the teenager who stayed up through lag and frustration just to keep playing. I thought about the young man now, paying his own tuition from the very game that once tested his patience. I realized something important. This wasn't just his victory. It was ours. Mine, for giving him the tools and support he needed. His, for turning those tools into something greater than I ever imagined. Together, we had rewritten our story, from scarcity to abundance, from frustration to fulfillment. The next morning, I sent him a message. I didn't want to say it out loud because my voice would probably crack, so I wrote it instead. I'm proud of you. More than you know. And no matter how much you grow, no matter how independent you become, I'll always be here. Not because you need me, but because I'm your Kuya. That will never change. He replied a few minutes later with his usual casualness. Thanks, Kuya. Don't worry. I won't forget you when I'm rich from Roblox. I laughed, but there were tears in my eyes. Because behind that joke was a promise, a bond that no amount of money could ever replace. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Life isn't about shielding someone forever. It's about preparing them to stand on their own. It's about giving them the chance to dream, to fail, to try again, and eventually to succeed in ways that surprise even you. My brother did that. He turned pixels into pesos, play into purpose, dreams into tuition. He showed me that the seeds of patience and passion we plant in youth can bloom into something extraordinary. So when I think about that moment, him telling me, Kuya, don't pay for my tuition, I already did. I don't just hear words. I hear the echo of every late night, every sacrifice, every promise kept. I hear the sound of a boy becoming a man, and I know, deep in my heart, that this is only the beginning.